Veronica slams her glass down on the table, her voice dripping with arrogance. "Are you deaf, girl? I said this is not what I ordered." Camille takes a deep breath, gripping the tray tighter. "Ma'am, I can fix this for you. I just need—" Veronica cuts her off, her voice echoing through the restaurant. "Fix it? You can't even take a simple order right. How do you even have this job?" Gasps ripple across the tables. All eyes are on them now. Then, a deep, authoritative voice interrupts. "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" Camille turns. Her heart stops. The restaurant owner stands behind her, and he does not look happy. What happens next will leave you speechless. The warm glow of the chandeliers bathed the luxurious restaurant in golden light, reflecting off the polished marble floors. The soft hum of classical music played in the background, mixing with the gentle clinking of silverware against fine china. The air was filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread, garlic butter, and a hint of truffle, an unmistakable mark of a high-end dining experience. At the center of it all, moving swiftly between the tables with a practiced grace, was Camille Johnson. Her crisp white shirt was neatly tucked into her black slacks, her apron perfectly tied, her every step deliberate yet effortless. A soft yet determined expression graced her face as she balanced an expensive bottle of Bordeaux wine on a silver tray. Camille had worked at Le Chateau, the city's most exclusive fine dining establishment, for nearly 3 years. It was the kind of place where the elite dined, where CEOs, celebrities, and high-ranking officials discussed business over $1,000 meals. For Camille, it was more than just a job. It was survival. Growing up in the tough neighborhoods of Chicago, Camille had learned early that life was anything but fair. Her mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, and her father, a once promising jazz musician, had vanished from their lives long ago. Camille knew struggle, knew what it meant to fight for every opportunity. College had been a dream she never quite reached. Instead, she found herself here, in a world that looked beautiful on the surface, but hid deep prejudices underneath. Tonight was particularly busy. Every seat in the house was filled, with servers weaving between tables, attending to the guests, ensuring every dish was perfect, every request met with a polite nod. And then she walked in. The room seemed to shift as Veronica Hastings strutted in, her designer heels clicking against the floor, demanding attention without saying a word. She was the wife of Elliot Hastings, a powerful businessman, a name that opened doors in high society. With her platinum blonde hair styled to perfection, diamond earrings that sparkled with every turn, and a custom-tailored dress that screamed wealth, she looked every bit the part of a woman used to getting exactly what she wanted. Trailing behind her, a group of equally well-dressed friends, their laughter sharp, their glances quick and judgmental. They were here to celebrate some milestone, an anniversary, a business success. It didn't matter. What mattered was that tonight they were in control. Camille, like every other server, knew Veronica's reputation. She was the kind of customer who didn't just complain. She made sure someone paid for her dissatisfaction. The last time she was here, a server had lost his job because her filet mignon wasn't medium rare enough. Camille had hoped that tonight would be different. It wasn't. The first signs of trouble. As she approached the table, she could already feel the tension in the air. Veronica barely looked up, inspecting her nails instead. "You took long enough." The words were spoken lazily, but the condescension behind them was sharp. "My apologies, ma'am. What can I get started for you tonight?" Camille asked, keeping her tone professional. Veronica's eyes flicked up, finally acknowledging her presence. A smirk tugged at the corner of her lips. "Oh, you're new, aren't you?" "No, ma'am. I've been here for a while." Doesn't matter. I want the Wagyu steak, medium rare." "No, scratch that. I want it blue, and if it's even slightly overcooked, you'll be hearing from me." "Of course, ma'am. And for the sides." Veronica let out a sigh as if the question was an inconvenience. truffle, mashed potatoes, asparagus. Oh, and bring me a bottle of Chateau Margaux 2015, the real one, not the cheap garbage you probably serve to people who don't know any better. Camille resisted the urge to clench her jaw. That bottle alone cost more than her entire paycheck, but she nodded, offering the usual polite smile before retreating to the back. 15 minutes later, Camille returned with the wine, carefully uncorking it with the expertise that had taken her years to perfect. She poured a small amount into Veronica's glass and waited. Veronica swirled it, inhaled, then took a sip. For a moment, there was silence. Then, "Are you kidding me?" The room turned to look as Veronica slammed the glass onto the table, the deep red liquid splattering onto the pristine white tablecloth. "This is not the wine I ordered," she spat. Camille blinked, stunned. She knew, without a doubt, that this was the exact bottle Veronica had requested. "Ma'am, I assure you, this is Chateau Margaux 2015. I personally checked." "Are you calling me a liar?" Veronica's voice rose, her sharp blue eyes narrowing in challenge. Camille's heart pounded. Every eye in the restaurant was now on them. One of Veronica's friends laughed under her breath. "God, this place really hires anyone these days, doesn't it?" The words hit like a slap. Camille felt the heat of embarrassment rise to her cheeks. Before she could respond, a deep voice interrupted. "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" A hush fell over the restaurant. Standing just a few feet away was Jonathan Cole, the owner of Le Chateau. A powerful presence in his own right, dressed in an immaculate charcoal suit, his expression unreadable. Veronica's demeanor shifted just slightly. She wasn't afraid. People like her rarely were, but she was calculating. "Ah, Mr. Cole," she said smoothly. "I was just explaining to your staff that the level of service here has been disappointing." Jonathan's dark eyes flicked to Camille, then back to Veronica. "Ms. Johnson has been one of my best employees for years. I find that hard to believe." Veronica let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, come on, Jonathan. Do I look like someone who would make a fuss over nothing?" Jonathan didn't blink. "Yes." A collective gasp rippled through the restaurant. Even Camille's breath caught. Veronica's eyes widened, momentarily at a loss for words. The tension in the air was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Then Jonathan took a step forward, looking Veronica dead in the eye. "Let's make one thing clear. No one disrespects my employees in my restaurant. If you don't like the service, you're free to leave." Another sharp gasp. Camille's heart raced. Did her boss just stand up for her? Veronica's face twisted, her lips parting as if to argue. But before she could, Jonathan folded his arms. "Well, you were so vocal a moment ago. You have something to say, Miss Hastings?" The entire room was waiting. For the first time, Veronica looked unsure. Her gaze flicked to her friends, then to the growing number of onlookers. And Camille? She had never felt so seen. Veronica Hastings sat motionless, her manicured fingers gripping the stem of her wine glass with a barely concealed rage. The humiliation burned hotter than the restaurant's dim, ambient lighting. Around her, whispers spread like wildfire. People who had once pretended not to notice her were now watching her every move. Jonathan Cole's words still hung in the air like an unshakable weight. "No one disrespects my employees in my restaurant. If you don't like the service, you're free to leave." Camille stood frozen, her hands tightening around the serving tray. Her heart pounded in her chest, but not with fear. This was something else, a mix of disbelief and a quiet, long-buried satisfaction. Veronica's lips curled into a sharp, dangerous smile. "Jonathan," she purred. Her voice dipped in false sweetness. "You and I both know this is a misunderstanding. I only expect a certain level of quality from an establishment of this caliber." Jonathan didn't waver. "And I expect a certain level of respect from my guests," he replied coolly. "If you can't provide that, you have no business dining here." A hushed silence fell upon the restaurant. Camille's fingers twitched. Would Veronica really leave? Would this nightmare finally be over? But she should have known better. Veronica wasn't the type to accept defeat, not in a million years. Veronica took a slow sip of her wine, then turned her attention back to Camille. "Fine," she sighed. "You want to play this game? Let's play." She reached into her designer clutch and pulled out a sleek, gold-plated phone. With a few swift taps, she put the device on speaker and raised it for the entire restaurant to hear. "Hello, darling," she cooed. "I need you to send someone down to Le Chateau immediately." There was a pause on the other end before a deep, authoritative voice responded. "Veronica? What's wrong?" "Oh, it's nothing, Elliot," she said, feigning innocence. "It's just that I'm being harassed by some less-than-professional staff, and your dear friend Jonathan here seems to think that's acceptable." Jonathan's jaw twitched, but he didn't interrupt. "Harassed?" Elliot Hastings' voice sharpened. "By who?" Veronica's eyes gleamed. "By a certain employee who doesn't seem to understand how to serve paying customers. I thought you might want to remind your friend who really keeps this place running." Camille's stomach twisted. She knew what Veronica was doing. She was using her husband's power, his influence, to turn the tide in her favor. Jonathan, however, remained unimpressed. "Elliot," he said evenly, "this is none of your concern." "Oh, but it is," came the smug reply. "Veronica is my wife, and we both know that a single bad review from her can do a lot of damage to your reputation." The tension in the room thickened. The other diners held their breath. Camille clenched her fists at her sides. Was she really about to lose her job over this woman's tantrum? Jonathan sighed, rubbing his temple. "Camille," he finally said, turning to her, "go check on the other tables." Camille's breath caught. "Mr. Cole, Now." The command was firm, but not unkind. Camille hesitated, but then nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat as she turned and walked away. Her hands trembled as she gripped her tray tighter, forcing herself to focus on her breathing. Don't let them see you break. Not here, not now. But she couldn't shake the sinking feeling in her chest. Veronica was a snake, and snakes always struck when you least expected it. The setup. As Camille busied herself with refilling water glasses and delivering dishes, she could hear Veronica's voice slithering through the air, dripping with false concern. "I just hate to see businesses fail because of poor service. I mean, can you imagine? People paying thousands for a meal and getting this kind of treatment? It's just tragic." The other wealthy guests at her table chuckled, murmuring their agreements. Camille fought the urge to clench her teeth. Breathe. Just breathe. And then, "Oh dear," Veronica gasped. "Is this hair?" Camille whipped around just in time to see Veronica dramatically holding up her fork, her face twisted in mock disgust. The entire restaurant turned toward their table once again. Jonathan's expression darkened. "Veronica!" "Jonathan," she interrupted smoothly, "I understand that mistakes happen, but this..." She gestured to her plate where, sure enough, a long strand of dark hair lay against the mashed potatoes. "This is just unacceptable." A wave of whispers rippled through the restaurant. Camille's blood turned to ice. She planted it. She had to have. Jonathan's eyes flickered toward Camille, but she already knew what everyone was thinking. The timing was too perfect. The accusations were stacking. And then, "I want her fired." Veronica's voice rang out clear as crystal. The words sent a sharp jolt through Camille's spine. "Excuse me? Jonathan." The night air was crisp, biting at Camille's skin as she stepped toward the dimly lit alley. The unknown number's message still glowed on her phone screen. "Meet me at the back entrance, now!" Her heart pounded. Every logical instinct told her to walk away, to go home, to try and make sense of what had just happened. But deep down, she knew. This was bigger than her. As she rounded the corner, a tall figure emerged from the shadows. "I was hoping you'd come," the voice said. Camille's breath hitched. Jonathan Cole stood before her. Gone was the unshakable businessman from the dining hall. In the dim alley light, he looked different, sharper, intentional. "Why did you send me home?" Camille asked, her voice raw with frustration. "Why didn't you stand up for me?" Jonathan exhaled, rubbing his jaw. "Because I needed you out of there," he said. "I needed you to be safe before I made my next move." Camille blinked. "Next move?" Jonathan reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and held it up for her to see. A recording of the entire conversation with Veronica. Every insult, every veiled threat, every power play, all of it. Camille's breath caught. "I wasn't about to let her win," Jonathan continued, his voice calm but firm. "But I needed proof, and now I have it." A slow realization dawned on Camille. "So, what happens now?" she asked. Jonathan smirked. "Now?" he repeated. "Now we turn the tables." The next morning, Camille sat at her kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. Her phone buzzed. Her social media feed was exploding. Videos, headlines, reposts, elite socialite caught on camera humiliating employee, and faces, instant backlash. Restaurant mogul fires back at power-hungry heiress. You won't believe his next move. Justice served. Watch this entitled woman's career come crashing down. Camille's jaw dropped. Jonathan had leaked the footage. The internet was ablaze. News outlets were picking it up. People were outraged. And most importantly, Veronica was nowhere to be seen. A notification popped up on her phone. Jonathan Cole. "Meet me at Le Chateau. We need to talk." Camille hesitated for only a moment before grabbing her coat. When she walked into the restaurant, the atmosphere was different. The usual quiet hum of elegance was replaced by a tangible buzz, a shift in power. Jonathan was waiting by the host stand, arms crossed. "You did this," Camille breathed. "No," Jonathan corrected. "We did this." He gestured toward the dining hall, where staff members were whispering excitedly. For the first time in years, Camille saw pride in their faces. And then, "Camille?" She turned, her breath catching. One of the senior managers stood before her. "We have a position open," he said. "One with more responsibility, more authority. And if you're interested, it's yours." Camille's heart skipped. Jonathan grinned. "You in?" She didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Justice had been served, but more importantly, Camille had won. And as she walked through the restaurant, now as a leader, she realized something. No one could take away her worth. No one could break her. Because when you stand your ground, the right people will stand with you. What do you think? How would you have handled this situation? Let's talk in the comments. If you love this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update.